we've got this vision of something that's absolutely amazing that we want to get out there, that we want to play the way that we want to engage with the game. And then we're done with this amazing game. And the next thing you know is we have no way to actually make money on it. So we decide that, well, either we're going to bolt on IAP or we're just going to forget about that, throw it into the premium bucket, maybe put some ads on a page or an interstitial somewhere and hope for the best. That works if you're doing game development for a hobby. There's nothing wrong with being a game developer for a hobby, but if you want to go to the next level and actually have your games cover, food, rent, clothing, things like that, at some point you're going to have to start incorporating game design and monetization at the very first parts of the game. And to that end, we've got some people who've actually been fairly successful at, paying the bills with their indie games. And I'd like to introduce the two founders of FIFTYTWO. Mikhail, Dmitry, go ahead and say hi.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, there we go. And okay, he's going to be sitting over there. So we'll talk to Mikhail. That's fine. We've got Michael Bujko, Michael from Critical Night Orbital Night Games. Thank you very much. We have Ivan Domankov. He's from Highcore Labs, and he's written a game that you can actually play out here, Tanks a Lot. I've spent way too much time playing that game. You can too. It'll be fun. And Alexandr
WILDEC.
There we go.
Hi to everybody.
He's a head of development over at WILDEC LLC, and you guys do everything from dating apps to casino games to cookie
we
clickers.
have not so lot of number of games. We have not so much games, but we have games range from casual to hardcore games.
Yeah,
so, dating services.
And that's kind of a great place that I'd like to start. Given the variety of games that you guys publish, how do you go about picking which monetization mechanic you want to use for any given game? Now, fair disclosure, all of his games are actually freemium, but
that's right.
How did you get there?
We're using our own feelings. We know that the more game is simpler, the more we should move to add monetization. The more game is hardcore, the more we should move to in-app purchases, building payment walls, etc.
Anybody else want to chime in on how they work on the balance between what monetization mechanic to pick?
Well, we use a little bit different scenario, like different approach. We consider game to be a business, like right from the start. So it doesn't occur that the game turned out to be hardcore while we were trying to make it midcore or softcore, right? So it's a business, and you have to use monetization as a foundation of the game if you're willing to succeed. So, well, at least that's what I think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the moment you start to design a game, you should have a glimpse of idea how do you want to monetize, because for free to play, it's monetization is embedded in the core gameplay, right? So unless you wanna do a premium game and you know that, you need to think about monetization from the get-go.
In our first game, Jealous, we experimented a lot with all types of monetization. First it was premium with in-apps, then it was free-to-play, we used ad integration, and what we all came up with is that everything must work together. You should think about user acquisition, about retention, about your monetization at the same time, because you should think where users will come from and how you will attract them. And it's the complex question, I think.
Okay, sorry, a little bit introduction. My name is Kirill. Sorry, it's okay. And I am from Go Kids, and we are creating educational kids games. We have a lot of titles, and in educational games for kids, you are really limited in ways how you can monetize your game. You cannot make as hardcore, midcore games, or a very limited ads. So it really depends on the age of kids. So for some titles you use premium, for some you use ads.
So when you guys were writing your very first games, now you're all a little bit more experienced, but when you started writing your games, did you start writing games out of passion for the art, or did you actually start thinking fairly revenue-centric about the games when you first started?
I started revenue-centric because I just joined a company because I needed a job.
All right, so maybe you actually haven't written your own game, but let's go to guys who have.
The first game we started to build was really long time ago. So the game has changed ever since. I mean, not the game we built, but the Apple Google Play niche has changed a lot. And you cannot simply design a game that would be just like an archer hit the apple. So that was the first game we developed. It was hit the apple. You just pull a bow and you release it and it hits the apple or hits the guy who falls and bleeds. So it was like completely simple game and we had tons of downloads on it just because there was nothing else. And now it will no longer work because there's so much competition. Like there are so great games out there. If you make the sequel of the game, it'll probably fail. And we tried it and we failed. So don't do archery games.
Yeah. Okay. We start creating kids games as family hobby, and it was only passion. So maybe we start thinking about revenue on 5th or 6th hour apps when we receive a lot of users, and we start to think we can earn some money from it. So yeah, it was from passion.
I have mine. We started the develop first game. It was 15 years ago. So it was the only model premium games. A lot of things changed since that time. Now we are trying to find balance between game creation, passion, and the money. It's very hard to do, but.
Well, how did you make the transition between being a premium shop and becoming now a freemium only producer?
Oh, it was a very long time ago. We are doing freemium games, I think, for maybe 10 years, maybe 8 years. I don't remember already. So premium model we do not use now.
So one of the things that I hear occasionally is that the premium model is really kind of the only pure model where you can build a game without having to compromise your standards of entertainment or game purity. You guys seem to have all gotten past that somehow. Is it because you need to put food on the table and the model is just better?
I think it depends on the region you're considering, because I mean, in certain regions in the world, free to play is considered as a dirty way of getting money out of people, but there are certain regions who enjoy this very much. I mean, I'm talking about Asia, for example, right? They don't really think it's bad. They like it. There are some cultures that actually boast about, brag about spending in a game because it's just how they do. So I think it's a matter of figuring out where do you want to sell your stuff, and that's how you choose your model, basically.
Well, and if I may, I'm not sure that this works for everybody, but I think that if you are willing to go from indie to a larger studio with a number of employees working for you, look, there's just no way you can monetize only on premium models. Like, if you're willing to increase your profits, then I think that free-to-play is the only way to go. And, like, the current situation on the market, like the state, it proves my point, that there are no companies out there big enough and monetize on premium only.
What I think is when you build premium game, you should concentrate on the quality and you should try to impress your users. So you make better graphics, audio, and when you make free-to-play games, you concentrate more on retention. You try to retain people and making them come to your game every day. So I think the main difference is the focus.
just wanted to follow up on this because what you said is actually very true, and my company proves that as well. Because going back to previous question, the company was started just by one guy, our general manager right now, who was working after hours in a IT powerhouse, and he was making a game. And once he done it, he convinced the CEO to release it and set up a separate company, right? And that's how Orbital Night was started. That was a premium title, and it took him really, really long time. I can't remember how many months, but just to complete this game. And then the next project, that was our biggest hit so far, Kirill, was done in 3 months and was released as a free-to-play game based only on ads and brought like 10 times the revenue or something like that. So, it's how you scale up.
It's interesting because people who want to defend making a larger studio from a premium model always point to Us 2 and their great game. I mean, certainly they were successful. Why can't more people be successful like that?
Because it's not an easy thing to do, actually.
Because there are exceptions to everything. Now, okay, so if you're looking at freemium as the way to kind of, and I really like what you were saying, is that freemium kind of depends a lot on retention and on volume. You're certainly not depending exclusively on in-app purchase sales in a freemium model. There've got to be, obviously there are ads, there are other mechanics that you can use to earn. Are those less problematic in terms of interfering with game design purity? For example, IAP is kind of a big thing because now you have to design a game loop that reinforces purchasing. But if you're just going to use ads, is there any danger at alienating the purity of the game or offending your users? That was a leading question.
Okay, I think that designing game with EAPs is actually the pinnacle of difficulty in this business, because people don't spend their money just on anything. They need to have a reason. They need to be incentivized, and that's why I think making money on ads as a small company is much easier, because it's easier to incentivize somebody to just watch a rewarded video. It's like a couple of seconds of his time and it doubles his score or whatever, than to ask him to spend even $1, because there's like this psychological block that you don't just spend.
And maybe this one is also obvious, but I'm pretty sure that if you will not set up the funnels to convert your users, and you will start showing the advertisement like from the very beginning, then you will decrease the number of possible conversions. I mean, of possible users going from free to play to paid user to paying user. You should use a lot of subscriptions. Use a lot of funnels, and then show rewarded videos or other types of advertising only to the segment that is not going to buy anything. It's not going to convert, because if there's an easy way for a guy who can pay with money, easy way is watching the video, he won't buy anything, because, why would I bother if there's only 30 seconds I can look anywhere, not the screen of my phone, and then I get something I want for free. If you show the ads to everybody, you're losing your paid users.
Does anyone else share that experience in their games?
There are two types of games. Concerning ads that are shown ads and that are being shown in ads. And the line between them is the ARPU. So it depends on it only. And if you could create a lot of content for your game, make this core loop that you told about, you could exclude ads and use only in-apps. But we can see that there are only a few games that are being shown in ads, and it is really hard work to do it. And only big companies like King and such big players on market could do this.
Thank you. So just as there are decisions that you kind of needed to make to go from whether you wanted to be in a kind of a premium business model or a freemium business model. Once you've landed on that and you want to supplement with ads, think of all the different ad types you guys have. I mean, it's not just banner ads anymore, is it? I mean, that was the day, but I mean, now you've got interstitials, you've got rewarded ads, you're talking even playable ads, and I really like where you're coming from. If you buy something, I'm not going to show you a rewarded ad. Why would I rob my IAP income stream? So how are you preventing your users from fleeing because all they see are ads? This is where you talk about your game design.
Yeah. We have a little science behind the way we show ads. I mean, we depend that on the score the user had. For example, if he had a high score, we know he might want to continue. If he continues, we can do it with watching ad. If he had very low score, there is no point in forcing an ad because he might not be interested in watching it, right? Or if he did not choose to continue with an ad, we assume he might on certain premises. We assume he might want to try again. If he wants to try again, we can force the non-skippable video because now he's eagerly waiting for another chance. So there are tricks like that, and we just want to find the sweet spot between making it annoying and just enjoyable thing to do.
Yeah, for our games, it's really difficult to use some new formats like non-skippable videos or playable, because for kids it's really difficult to implement in game design, in kids game design. So we are really old-fashioned with banners and interstitials native, and our main challenge is to find balance between number of ads and user experience, and to minimize user impact.
So do you use the same kind of programmatic ad selection that Michael is using? Do you decide not to show ads to some people or in some scenarios?
Yeah, sure. Sometimes we use, it depends on how much a user is playing. The more he is playing, the less ads he saw.
Maybe I want to summarize all that was saying here. We are game developers. We are trying to create a game world. So anytime when user interact with our monetization, no matter is ad monetization or in-app purchases, he's frustrated. So our aim is to smoothly build in our monetization. Yes, it can be a lot of ways. An example, when the user won the level, got some prize, got some bonus, he will likely watch your video, watch your banner, or do some in-app purchases. That's the way we do. We try to smooth integrate our monetization to the game.
Do any of you have a mechanic in one of your games where a user can spend some money and opt out of future advertisements?
Yes.
So what's your technique? Do you just present so many ads, they get so amazingly upset that they'll go ahead and spend $4 to eliminate the ads, or are you just going to lose your user base that way?
No, it's very like it's if you really want to do it, you can do it, but we don't do games that are really that are fit for EAPs actually. So we don't really expect people to buy off this option, right? So
what does get people to use the buying out of ads option?
We use only rewarded videos, which is why you cannot buy out of them. Yeah, you can speed up your progress, or you can get something for free. I mean, if you're in segments, which is not paying, right? But there's no way you can. I mean, you press the button to watch video voluntarily, so it's not like it's not like it's coming out of nowhere. So it's not sudden or I don't know. So it's just. You press the video you press the button to watch the video, and then you watch it. And why would you buy out of it, right?
Fair enough. I mean, if it's monetizing well, why stop? But I know at 52 Games, you guys are actually monetizing really well through interstitials, right?
Exactly.
So would you even consider a buyout of ads option?
Yeah, we used it, and it came together with special endless mode in our game, and people used this option, but it was not so big revenue from this. Ads give us much more.
Yeah, and for some of our games, this in-app is the main in-app of the game. Because for small games which are monetized with ads, we use only one in-app to opt out from ads. And it is the best user for us who buy this in-app, because it will happy user, happy kid, and they will play our games for a long time. So that's why.
Actually, I want to touch back on that about keeping and improving your retention. Obviously, you guys have played around with different monetization, including different ad category and ad types. Have you found that certain implementations affect retention more than others?
Plus, also, we return to the number of ads that we are showing and see how retention is going. And it's really, sometimes retention is going dramatically down only if you change one instance of ad. So it's difficult for us to test. We test on some small groups because in kids apps, when they show some ads where they don't want to look, they give us 1-star rating and delete our games and give us bad comment. So it's really difficult for us to test, and we are trying to test with small groups and as slow as possible. Yeah.
At the very core, retention and monetization are contradicting. I mean, not contradicting; they are antagonistic, right? So it's about finding the sweet spot. And through many games I've worked on, these little factors of what works for the user base and what doesn't were varying heavily. Like, for example, if we did right now in a casual game like a full screen interstitial just at the launch of the game, we would lose, like, I don't know, 90% of the audience, because the really short session times. People just launch it to play for literally a minute or two, and that's it. And they don't want to waste time for watching some BS, right? While in a more advanced game we worked on a couple of years ago, we could easily do that, and people would still play it because they know they will dedicate at least 15 minutes or whatever. So it's okay. They are so much into the game, we can pull it off, and it doesn't do anything for attention.
So there were no general rules of thumb that you developed. It really was kind of on a per experience basis.
No. There were rules, but I'm just saying that there is no one golden rule for the entire game industry.
What would you recommend that developers here do to kind of find that sweet spot between ad impressions and retention? Is there a set of tests or user studies that you found really successful there?
I could recommend to listen to your users because we used one ad network and fill rate was quite low. And everything was okay. But one day we started using ad mediation, and fill rate dramatically go up, and we got many reviews like, you've got a lot of ads, because we were trying to show it after each round. And because fill rate was low, it was okay. And so then after it increased, we should tune this model. So just listen to your users; they will say everything to you.
Yeah, I'd like just to add a little bit. I mean, you raised a very good point that it's all about the placement. I mean, you should really find out the sweet spot in your game where the maybe an interstitial or a banner would look good. I mean, it would look normal, so a user will not get frustrated out of it. Because if you cover some part of the gameplay, or if there's a banner always inside your game experience, then you will probably leave, because you've effing hate this game. Why would you continue playing it? Which is why I think it's all about the placement, and it really depends on the game. So there's no golden rule, I guess.
Yeah, just to ask yourself a question: if you would be annoyed by playing it this way, right? So as I said before, we developed this set of constraints to show or not to show the ads to our specific cohorts of users, precisely because we want to show them in the moments of their excitement or the moments we know they wouldn't leave, and that's okay for them to watch it.
And also, as we see now, it is easier to work with ads comparing with 3 or 4 years ago. Because 4 years ago, when users see ads, it's very often we see negative comments. Now, users okay with ads. Small ads and good placements is okay for them. So, yeah.
So you must have a system, or at least some discipline at checking reviews that people leave about your game, and how do you know when, obviously you get a few 1-star reviews, I didn't like the ad, I've deleted your game. Okay, we all get 1 or 2 of those, right? When do you know that you've hit kind of a critical mass, you need to change something? How do you process those?
Yeah, for us, we're trying to work with each review, because when parents decide to download game, they not only look on screenshots, video, and overall rating, but they read first 10 reviews to see what is in game from other parents. So that's why we react on each review, and maybe on some percent of equal reviews, we start to change something for this game.
What do the rest of you guys do as far as monitoring?
We're trying to listen our community, not only reviews, but in social networks, some blogs on our websites, and we have some acceptance level of disturbance of our auditory. So we implement some new features, some new monetization. After that, we are listening for our community. If we have not so much noise, not so much disturbance, it's okay. If it's more than we can accept, we are modifying it or completely remove.
So, in what event are you willing to lose users in exchange for additional revenue, either through ads or IAP? And I want to pull out a very specific, famous example: Candy Crush. They were willing to boot hundreds of thousands of users from their game because they didn't want to pay to keep playing. That took a lot of courage to do that. Do any of you guys have that kind of courage, or is it all just too terrified about keeping retention to just keeping the players who will generate revenue?
I don't think you should push out a player who never pays and probably will never pay in the future, but because every player can bring his friend to your game, can make some organic traffic. So you should do your monetization very carefully. You cannot lose all your non-paying audience.
If we're talking about the scale of King, then maybe, well, why not? Why not lose this? Why not lose this old lady? Well, we'll get another one. But if we're talking about indie developers, like for us, losing a user over a paywall or over some odd rewarded video or ad or something, it's just enormous. It's a serious fail. So at least in our company, we never work that way. So we try to care about every user because we're not that big. So, when you're king, you're too big to fail, right? But when you're high core labs, nobody knows you, right? So you cannot lose your user.
Yeah, exactly what I wanted to say. I mean, with King, this is it. If you grow this big, and if you're a big company like that, you eventually need to switch to EAPs as your main monetization method, I believe, because it's just what brings more money in comparison to ads on a general scale.
But was King really that big before they made the decision in Candy Crush to jettison non-generating users?
It was a well-calculated decision. I mean, they it wasn't like, let's do it, right? But then again, I've read a lot of successful game deconstructions, and the bigger the game, the more paywalls you'll find like that. So it's not just it was just king. Companies do that all the time. You have that in strategies, in time management games. You'll eventually bump into paywall. If it has EAPs, it will most likely have paywalls, right? That's just that. But just one thing that I have noticed is also no, it's a different topic. Sorry, I'll say it on another occasion.
So, those are good inputs about how and when to use ads, different ad types, in-app purchasing, designing for the flow. But let's go back to you've just started working on a new game design. Given that so much of your ad and IEP generation, that you distribute throughout the game is going to be based on user testing, user feedback, what do you do in the design phase? Do you guess and hope you get it right? Are there specific kinds of game mechanics that will monetize better either with ads or with IEP?
I'd say you target the user base you already have. So you pretty much know what are their user behaviors if you monitor it, and I would assume everybody does. So if you know your audience is like a couple of tens of thousands casual players, you pretty much make a game for them, right? People tend to forget about that, while it's the basic rule. You do content for your audience.
So let me back that up a level. When you're thinking about designing your game, you know who's going to be buying it. You know who your target market is.
If it's not your first game, then I suppose so. That's the right way to do it. I mean, you create a product. You're supposed to sell it. You need to know who you're selling it to, because you need to know what he wants to buy.
But is that really what a first-time indie developer does?
No.
No. So how many of you guys here are working on your very first game? A handful of people, a handful of brave people anyway, who are willing to raise their hand. What information is valuable to them if they're kind of thinking, gosh, now I have to worry about who's going to buy it? I mean, when you wrote your first game, didn't you think, my game's going to be fun for everybody? Everybody is my target market. I mean, well, okay, that's what I thought, right? Not true. So what's going to help these developers?
I think it's the other way around. If you're working on your very first game, it comes from passion and you do it for yourself. You don't have any insight in the market, I believe. You just sorry for the comparison, but I think you're sitting in your mom's basement and you're pretty much coding until you're happy, right? And then you present it to the world and it either clicks or not. And that's where you go next.
Yeah, and after that, when you release your first game on passion, you will see who is your target audience. And after that, you can think about how to monetize it.
That's actually really good advice. Y'all should be writing that down. I like that. I would actually like to, before we go to general Q&A, I would really like you guys to kind of wrap up by thinking, when you were writing or publishing your first or second game, what do you really wish you had known about the relationship between game design and monetization, the purity of designing a fun game and then living off the proceeds? Start at the end.
I think it's all about your feelings. The game. It's nobody can develop monetization from the level of game engineering from the start of the game. So you should build some scratch. I think all genres was already invented. You cannot invent new one. So you can you know what type of monetization is common for your genre. So you should do some scratch and launch your game. Then you'll see. We are building our monetization in progress of game living.
Yeah, for us, the only advice which I can give for first or second game, just don't forget about monetization. It's enough.
I'd say just don't forget to make your game fun, because there was a moment in time, I believe, where there was just clones after clones after clones, and the game that were not fun, but they were just overloaded with ads and with EAP offers and whatever. And I believe now it's time when people are realizing that the content is the king, and unless your game is fun and really makes you want to play more, there's no monetization method, no license you can pull, no nothing, because you won't sell it. It will just not sell.
Absolutely agree with you, and I'd like to add that monetization is mostly affected by your high-level gameplay. And as for core mechanics, I think you should just try keep it fun, as you thought, and addictive. And you could use any monetization with any, I think, core mechanics. It all depends on your meta gameplay, high-level gameplay.
Damn, man, you said right what I was saying. Yeah, you should definitely balance out core gameplay and meta gameplay, because meta is what monetizes it and core is what holds your users. And yeah, you should stop thinking that this is your hobby and start looking at it as a business, because the market is so tough. You probably will be more successful in different field. I mean, not in game development. You should probably think about that a lot. And if you're still willing to stay in game dev, then you should consider it as a business and keep it fun anyway.
Do we have any questions from the audience? Anyone out? Ah, wonderful.
Hi, thank you for the lecture. I have a question. Like, have you ever worked with such monetization, like crowdfunding or donation inside of app? For example, if you're making your first game, you set an example with Archer. Yes, for example, you're making such thing like we want to make a new game, or we want to make new levels. So for this we are generating money. Can you, and you're giving the possibility to people to pay the amount of money and to decide to help you or not. Have you ever worked with such monetization, and if it was successful, if yes? You know that you will make new DLC for, not DLC, new levels for your game, but before that you're making like we want to make new levels. For such reason we need some amount of money. You're making. Have you ever made such things, and if they work or not?
Sometimes it's impossible, but we have the good case. It's the game called The Silent Age. They used exactly this way. They had absolutely free first season, and it was a donate button, but not by in-app purchase. It's you opened another website, because these restrictions can't allow it, and the second season was paid. But users who donated, they had a special code that they used to get it free.
Okay, that was a great question. Thank you for that. That was hard. I like that. Any other questions out here?
Now, it's actually an insight of mine, and I was trying to make a counter argument because you guys all agree that free to play is the king, right? It's the only way to stay, or at least many of you told that. You told that. Michal told that. Sorry, the guy at the end told that. But I'm working in free to play for a long time already, and I'm thinking about the new project, which will be surprisingly paid. And the idea, so what I'm trying to think about it and share the insight with you is that there is one big argument behind the paid. With free to play, generally you start on mobile, you can't monetize mobile only, or usually it's hard to move to other platforms. When you're making paid, you can do Steam, you can do whatever else, right? I don't know, Mac App Store or stuff like that, or consoles, right? So there is a very good example of a company in Poland called 11 Beats. These guys are making really awesome games, and they're making really huge money on App Store, and they're paid titles, but they're making as well a very good money on Steam on consoles. Just something to think about.
But they're doing it the way around. I mean, they start from the big platforms and then
not only. No, with the this War of Mine, they started on mobile first. Yep.
Okay. Actually, they're not the only ones. Creative Mobile in Estonia has actually gone from an all-mobile freemium base to where they're actually still doing mobile first, but they're doing premium so that they can actually extend that IP to other primarily premium platforms and recoup more revenue from that IP, that instance of IP. So that was a really good point. Thank you. Other questions?
May I?
Oh, yes.
I absolutely agree with you. I think for the last couple of years, people are tired of freemium model. They tired of payment walls, and I think it's new tension to go back to premium model as it was 10 years before. Yeah, it's new big tension in next few years.
Yes, I'd like to add that if you go to the new Apple App Store and go to Today tab and to games, and what you see, there are really a lot of premium games now. And Apple help such developers and feature them and take interviews and tell people about these developers. And I think it's another generation of mobile games started with the new App Store, and it's a good monetization.
And yeah, one more point to your basket, right? Yeah, that's true, because I mean, if you're indie, that's way easier for you to start is a premium title, because like free to play requires a lot of analytics, a lot of tweaking, balancing things, knowing your markets, knowing what you're doing. And while in a premium product, you can consider, you can concentrate on narrative. You can make a very good game, and Apple will love it, and you will just release it and get featured, or maybe featured by Amazon. Mike's a great guy to talk to. So yeah, that's a very good point, that maybe for the first game, premium is not a very bad idea, because it's way easier and you can concentrate on the fun part and concentrate less on the business part.
See, that would have been a great piece of last advice to give everyone. That's good. I like that. Do you guys consider piracy when you're designing your monetization?
Well, we do consider that. I mean, we just validate every purchase, and every number we validate on a server. So if you are willing, well, our game is currently, the title we present here is multiplayer, and if you're willing to cheat in the game, well, you might, but you will play with the toughest AI we have in the game, and you will never play with real players. So you will just be alone in your room with fake numbers, and we will not care about you actually. But we will never ban you or block you. But you will stay in the game. You will continue playing, but never online. And yeah, that's how we do it, at least.
Fighting piracy is the case when you're really big, because it takes a lot of effort and a lot of engineering, basically. I have an insight from one of my previous companies. The biggest and the toughest thing was what do you do with pirates who are actually whales? We had plenty of whales in the game that were spending so much money and they still couldn't win, so they started to cheat. And what do you do with them? Do you throw them out? Do you ban them? Do you make them play only with cheaters? You know, it's a tricky part, because on the normal run, we just created like in a multiplayer or the leaderboard, we just created separate server for them and let cheaters play with cheaters, right? Everybody's having the same chance. But for this stuff, we never had the right answer, so I won't give you one.
We are making multiplayer games, so we have no problems with piracy. That's the best way.
Our second game is a premium title, and it was pirated on the first day of release. But we don't care about it. I think, why not? What do we lose? I don't know. No, I think these guys, they won't pay you anyway, but maybe they will tell about your game to their friends. And the most people are lazy. They just want to go to the App Store, to Google Play, and press install. They don't want to go to some websites, download these APKs. And I think the amount of people is not so big to care about it.
Alexandr, what does piracy look like on a dating app anyway?
Oh, there is no piracy in DataNet. You cannot cheat them because everything is on our servers. So you cannot cheat.
Aren't the dating apps all about cheating, actually?
Yeah.
That's funny. To kind of wrap things up, I want to actually ask you one more question about tanks a lot. When you were designing tanks a lot, how did you make sure that the rewarded ads didn't actually conflict, or how do you make them additive to the things that are in your IAP catalog? For example, the items I can get from the rewarded ad, are they the same things that are in your IAP catalog, or are they different than the things in your IAP catalog?
That's a good question. That's the hidden mechanic we never try to disclose to the users, right? Like the one as well. If you spam shooting the opponent, I mean, if you tap fingers multiple times, then the next shot will be weaker, but it will reload faster, right? So yeah, this hidden mechanic is also working with us, but currently we have not tested it on the massive amount of players because the game is not yet released. But we try to using the same mechanism in our other games, and yeah, if you speed up the unlocking of the loot box, then you will probably get less details. I mean, less parts or whatever. Yeah, but that's a good question. Everybody forget what I said.
So a lot of guys here are developing their own apps. So what are the danger signs, like that signal that it's time to move on, like leave the dead horse alone? You know, that it's time to just forget about your app, and it hasn't been released. Like before the release, or even after. So, like the danger signs.
Well, I would say we've been there. We've developed a game for 3 years. We've spent like too much money on it in our scale, and then we just decided to close it because it was for too long. We spent too much money, and the key feature and key point here is that the retention rate of the first day was so low that we knew that we will never get the return of investment if we start user acquisition, which we tried, and we proved our point, but the ROI wasn't working. So yeah, I would say two things. First one is start testing the prototype as soon as possible. Like, do not try to polish everything. You can polish it on the go. I mean, you should test the core and meta like as fast as you can. And second, you should consider key metrics. I mean, less about monetization, more about retention of the first, third, seventh, and the 30th day. That's it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, going back to what you said before, you need to treat it as a business and not your hobby anymore. You cannot really be emotionally attached to your game too much, right? Because if the game is out, you need to monitor the KPIs. You need to set yourself some gates that you want to reach. And if for example your retention is bad, and you tried like 3 or 4 times and nothing helps, this is the decline, right? And I would say retention is the king, because the monetization, you can always find some way to monetize a good product. If the retention is good, the product is pretty much good. And in development, it's another story, because there's a saying that in game dev, the first 90% of the production is very easy, and the second 90% is very hard, because the scope tends to get higher and higher and higher and higher and bigger. And at some point, the artists that are actually making the game, I mean, everybody here that's working on a creative product is an artist, stop seeing the moment where the game's supposed to be released, and they just want to add more and more, right? So you need to just calculate your costs if it makes financial sense for you to keep prolonging that.
More indie game developers have failed with that one colossal big miss than multiple rapid failures. So fail fast, fail quickly, and test early. Guys, thank you very much for coming to the panel. I hope you've taken away something that'll help make your businesses more profitable. Thank you.